one of the things we wanted to do was, as the dev team here, really express our admiration for the genre. And so what this whole thing is about is we're going to be doing streams with folks like Amaz and others over the course of kind of the next 6 weeks. And then we've set up a Reddit channel. If you want to join our discussion, we're having a really cool discussion about TCGs in general as a genre, CCGs, TCGs. And I think generally like how the genre lost the T in TCG. And so the best place to start is Magic. Amaz, you could probably start us off. Are you a Magic fan?
All right. Yeah, I'm actually like a super fiend in Magic right now. So I don't know if it's okay for that.
Nice.
To have like Magic cards on my desk like right now because I'm practicing for regionals. So I'm definitely still very big into the competitive scene. I also host Monday draft nights in my house. So so every Monday, just people come over.
Do you remember when you first became exposed, when you first started playing?
Oh, yeah. So I started Hearthstone first, and then after I moved into like a team house, everybody was like talking about Magic, and then I was like, well, I kind of wanna join the conversation or whatever, right? So then all the Hearthstone players literally just told me to play Magic, and then it was a pretty rough start because there was a lot to learn. But then as soon as I got into it, it was just fun because it was just with players, with friends, and that's just always what makes games more like it's just better.
Well, as the token old guy here, my first introduction was I had gotten my first like real video game job at Xbox, and I was the first marketer on the original Halo game, and I found out that the Bungie team would play Magic like literally almost every evening, and in order for me to like get in with them, because I was a dork marketer and usually game development guys don't like marketers, I had to prove I was a video gamer or in this case a gamer generally. And so I started playing with those guys at night and kind of got hooked with it. I'm a big fan of competitive game experiences, and so it was really interesting to me because I hadn't played anything like that before. I'd pretty much just been a video gamer. Obviously played when I was a kid, board games and stuff, but not this interesting social dynamic where you're literally sitting across from the person that you're playing against and looking at them in the eye. It's kind of like poker, right? But there was a whole bunch of interesting mechanics that I kind of hadn't played very much of, like the whole idea of turn-based strategy. Like I do something, you can think about it, and then you can do something to counteract me. That was new to me. And this idea that mana as a resource, and you have to have lands, and you got to put lands into your deck, and that's your resource for mana. And the whole idea of the creativity of building decks, like that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is like those were all things that originated from Richard Garfield and Wizards of the Coast. He, brilliant, obviously game designer, came up with those ideas and have really like been the foundation for everything else that's come out of after that, including obviously Hearthstone, but other games, Legends of Runeterra and Gwent and you name it, Yu-Gi-Oh, and all these other video versions of that or digital versions of that. What are the foundational elements to still call a game a TCG or CCG you can't break? Because you're Amaz, you're playing Slay the Spire right before this, which has card-based mechanics, but it isn't a head-to-head multiplayer game. So like, I don't know, maybe what do you think that they did that is like endearing, and then what can you do differently with those rule sets?
Let's see. Okay, I think the biggest feature that Magic has going with them is, I think it's like the color pie. Like, how Magic has like 5 colors, like Wooburg, right? And then when you're making a deck for anything like a tournament, or you're building a commander deck or whatever, it's just so crazy that you can just put any card in your deck. You can be as greedy as you want, right? You can literally just play 5 colors. You have to build a mana base to support it and whatever, or you can just even play like a monocolor deck. You can just like the creativity in deck building is really, really crazy because you're just unlimited. You're just limited by how greedy you are and how creative you are. And each of those colors also do something very like very very specific. There's like how do you say it? There's like things that color can do, and there's things that a color can't do, right? So
Right.
yeah, so it depends on really your playstyle and what kind of weaknesses you want to show up if you want to add a second color and stuff like that. And compare it to like Hearthstone, which I play the most, right? Hearthstone has like neutral cards and like class cards, and once you select a class, those are your limits already, right? It's kind of like arbitrary limitations. But in Magic, you can just put any card you want,
Yeah, Magic allowed you to just make a messy deck if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Like anything from any color. But the way that I think it was brilliant, the way that they limited that and made it so that you couldn't just take the best card from every color is through land, right? Because you had to have the right color land and able to play those games, those cards, right? And so there are downsides, obviously. You can't like fill your deck with tons and tons of multiple colors of land, because then it dilutes your deck from having spells and characters, right? Most of the video games, Hearthstone and others, they don't use land. Do you think do you like the concept of land? Because that's one of the things I think most games haven't pulled forward and used like Magic has. What do you guys think about that?
I was gonna say, personally, I prefer it just because I have something else to manage. The kind of person that likes to have like a lot of things to do and anything that can like sort of affect tactics. And there's they've kind of gone, since the very early days, they've gone like all out with land. So many different forms of lands and effects that they have. It's just another sort of mechanic to add to the playstyle, so I'm all for it.
I kind of like the land cards themselves. Like, they're very beautiful, right? Like, you don't have to like always have like a character or like a spell, it's always action. You can actually have some cards that have beautiful landscapes, and like show off the world building a bit. So I think there's a couple of upsides for the land mechanic. I think most digital games nowadays, they don't do that because obviously the main thing is like, oh, I just got screwed by lands, I didn't draw enough, or I drew too many. It's like feels bad moment. But at the same time, gameplay wise, it's actually kind of cool because you can't rely on card draw to always draw you into something that you can play, right? Like sometimes your draw 2 cards could be just a blank because it's the late game and you need spells and you don't need any more lands. So I kind of like the variance of that. And obviously the cost is that sometimes in Magic there are some non-games where you just lose.
We have a comment in chat from Ghost about the lands. Land mechanic is fun and balanced until you don't draw any then.
I have a land that I picked just for Ghost. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's Ghost Quarter. Can you see that on the cam? Yeah.
Nothing more satisfying than like a rare land card. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Have any of you ever read the study that WotC did on their player types? I think they call them Timmy, Johnny, and Spike.
Yeah.
You ever read any of that?
I have, yeah. I'm familiar with that.
What are you, Amaz?
I'm definitely pretty spiky when it comes to Magic. So for me personally, I was also joining Hearthstone tournaments, right? So I usually just want to see, okay, how can I perform the best? But then a little bit of a splash of a Timmy because I was known as like the priest player, I guess. I just wanted to make a bad class good, so I was like, all right, let's try and limit myself in priest, but then try and also, make it as strong as possible, right? So yeah, and also like I'm still attending a lot of tournaments these days, so I definitely want to. That's definitely my archetype, which is a spike for people who don't know, or like the players who like play to win, or like min max. Try and like make the best use of the deck, be efficient. It's always about just kind of like win rate. That's how I see it.
Yeah, spikes are the tryhards, right? ladder climbers. I think I would be. I'd probably be a blend of like Timmy and Spike. So I want to win, but I kind of like having the ability to win with style, if you know what I mean. Like, so I'm drawn more to combo decks or OTK decks, or like laying out a trap 3 or 4, turns ahead and having my opponent fall into that trap. Especially like beating aggro decks, that just try to flood the board or to just try to go nuts on attacking face. So I don't know. What do you guys, Nia and Ryan? Have you ever looked at those categories? Are you one of those three?
Well, when I started, I was definitely more of like a team kind of player. I just wanted to play and have fun and just see and just see how all the cards work. Play some cool combos and all of that. But with the time going on and always, facing our top players all the time, I started to become more competitive. So I can see myself as a blend as well, just like you, Steve, like something between a Timmy and a Spike right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for those that don't know, nobody said Johnny yet. Johnnies are, I think, sometimes misperceived as like new to CCGs, or maybe not good at CCGs, but generally I think WotC tries to describe them more about that they play the game for the love of playing the game. They really enjoy the socialization aspects. They just like seeing the cool card art or having some crazy random thing happen. Hearthstone really played well into Johnny's. Little known fact, did you know that Richard Garfield, when he first created Magic the Gathering, wanted it to be to play for stakes, right? And so there was the concept originally that you had to Annie, I think, or you had to put in a card. You and your opponent both had to take a card from your deck, put it on the desk, and then you would play, and whoever won got both of those cards, right? I think there was all sorts of legal issues later on about game of chance, game of skill, and gambling and all that sort of thing. You mentioned, we were talking about Friday Night Magic, and that's always been like the advantage of the physical card game, right? As you get together in person and like IRL play games with each other. With video games, don't have that. I remember when that was one of the things that the development team on Hearthstone always really kind of wished they had. I remember being in tons of meetings with Ben Brode and Hamilton Chu and Jason Chase and talking about how we could try to replicate that. Eventually we did launch Fireside Gatherings. Do you remember that feature where you could you'd go to your local tavern, you could, if you were the organizer, you could set up your own rules and have an event like in a pub or something like that? Anybody ever play those?
Yeah, I actually went to one of them, and it was like in a kind of like an arcade bar kind of thing, So that was really fun. Obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, but a lot of people knew me, I guess. So we chatted a lot, did some back and forth exchange. But I think the one thing I remember being the most social was there was a DreamHack Open with Hearthstone. And that was really fun. So everybody had was playing on the tablets. To look back into Magic, yeah, it's always more fun to just kind of like have a person across the table from you, and that's kind of like I'm actually playing against another human dynamic, right? And obviously, there's some more interesting game mechanics to come. It's like, if they're staring on this card for too long, then maybe they have something good. You can kind of bluff a little bit easier as opposed to like digitally. So it's a very interesting, different game, kind of.
Yeah, bluffing is something that is kind of missing from a lot of digital card games. I think that's the mechanic that the Hearthstone guys went off and did Marble Snap. And so that mechanic of that little cube I think it's called the break mechanic or something like that.
I think it's just a snap, yeah. So like you raise the stakes by double, yeah.
Right, and so that's kind of a bluff, right? Because if you've got nothing in your hand and you're at the end of the game, you're like, well, you try to fake this guy out to make him think that I've got something bigger, right? So yeah, but that's the big thing that Magic has, is that social aspect of getting together in person and collecting physical cards that have value. And
yeah, I think the Magic gameplay is actually really nice. Because obviously you have the, I can play around my opponent's cards and do that. But even just like the combat phase in Magic is just brilliant, I think. It's like, I'll always give the example of a stalemate of like, if one person has like two minions and the other person has a 3/3, you're effectively in a stalemate because you both can't attack each other unless you have some other tricks you have. So like that is actually amazing. When I first thought about that, like when I first kind of really boiled it down, I was like, wow, this is a great game. You know, you can have games where literally nobody's not really advancing, and no one's like really winning, and you're just kind of bluffing. It's like, oh, I have this, but do they have this to counter it? You know, so okay, we'll just sit here and stare at each other for a while.
Thank you so much for joining us in today's first episode of the State of TCG Talk. We had a blast with all of you. And again, thank you to all of my wonderful co-hosts and guests. We're looking forward to talking with you guys more in the future at future events and who knows, wherever the road may take us.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you for hosting
Thanks
the
for
show,
having
Ryan.
me.
Yep.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.